I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, man, if I'm going to be a big leaguer, if the clock is ticking, I need to do this now. The second they do give me that chance, like, I'm going to put a stranglehold on this job possibility to be a major league regular. Having the chance to play in the World Series, that was the thrill of a lifetime. Does it make me a little bit sick to my stomach? Absolutely it does. It's going to be hard for him. Like, he is going to have to battle his tail off to get me out. I'm laying in my bed and I go, oh my goodness. Like, I yell it from the bedroom. My wife's like, what's going on?
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He's got it. 1-0.
Welcome back to another episode of To the Majors. Today's guest is a two-time AL East or American League champion, probably one of the most beloved Texas Rangers of all time, and in our research, probably the most decorated Baylor baseball player of all time.
I think Max Muncy is climbing the chart.
He is climbing the chart. Okay, that's a good point. He's climbing the charts. But dude, your numbers at Baylor though, we were looking at them. Dude, they're almost like Lance Berkman-esque. You had 121 hits.
So that might be like the signature moment of my college career. But,
dude, 121 knocks. How many games?
60, upper 60s.
Two a game.
Yeah.
You had two a game.
Yeah.
And you were getting walked.
And hitting 400, man. I mean, that was my goal. I want to hit 400. So,
man.
Achieved.
What was my kind of claim to fame in college is I had a long hit streak.
Right.
Of 56 games.
Okay.
What was the longest streak you had in college? Because I'm just doing the math. That's two a game. So, chances are you probably didn't have a hit somewhere. So, that's pretty crazy.
I think it was only in the 20s, honestly.
Which
a lot of 4-hit games.
But I did it. But one of the fun ones was I think there was a multi-hit streak in there that was 11 or 12 games. So yeah, I feel like that was harder.
And that was big. That was Big 12 play, right?
That was I don't know if that was Big 12 player. I mean, we were in the Big 12.
Yeah, that was when Baylor, Big 12. So you guys were playing some dogs on the weekends, right, too, because that was back when it was Texas, Oklahoma,
A&M, a lot of good schools.
So you're from Houston, Texas, grew up in Spring, Texas.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of leads you to go to Baylor? Because I saw UT, Rice, A&M.
So it was just more of a feel with the coaching staff that, when you get recruited by colleges, everybody's going to tell you the same thing. Everybody's going to say, hey, we envisioning you coming in here, getting the chance to start as a freshman if things go well in the fall and, if you hit the way that we envision. But you also do your research, right? A lot of people, you come to find out that, well, everybody's saying the same thing, but, if you go to Texas, there's been this player, that player, that they've told the same thing and they haven't hit and they've run them off after a year or so. So there's reputations that come with these schools where, everybody said, and obviously the good thing about Baylor too is they were my highest scholarship offer. A lot of people maybe still not understand that, and things have changed in recent years with with baseball scholarships that, it was 11.7 scholarships. So you're not getting the same amount, the same percentage of scholarship everywhere. And Baylor was my highest offer. So I'm like, well, they're putting their money where their mouth is. Their coaches are the most trustworthy and genuine, I felt like, and that ended up being true because I broke my hamate bone my sophomore year. And they still stuck with me through freshman struggle, sophomore year, and, got a lot of playing time.
Dude, so, all right, let's talk about this, because was there ever a chance that you were just going to forego college? Because you got drafted out of high school. I know it was late.
Right. So, no, I didn't really think. My parents were big on the thought of me going to college. I think it would have had to have been a first round type of deal and getting first round type of signing bonus to forego college, which the thought of that didn't sound appealing to my parents. I felt like I needed that soft landing, and not to mention too, the opportunities that I had to swing a wooden bat were not good ones. I was 175 pounds coming out of high school. So even though the power was projectable, like I couldn't hit a ball out of a ballpark with a wooden bat when I was 18 years old.
Yeah, because, so you're 50th rounder out of high school.
Right.
By the Angels.
Right.
You go to Baylor, and you go in the first round 3 years later.
Yeah.
What the hell happened?
Yeah.
Because that's not like a kind of a normal trajectory to go from. And for people at home listening, like 50 rounds don't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
50 rounds when you got drafted was the last round to get drafted.
A lot of the guys in 50th round, they didn't even get offered contracts.
Well, and I think there's maybe there's politics or maybe there's a deeper story there, because so like the Angels were the most interested team.
Yeah.
And I don't want to put this in stone, but it seemed like in talking to them in like the week or so leading up to the draft, they would have been interested enough to possibly take me as high as like the 7th round.
Okay.
But I gave them mainly the feel that I wanted to go to college, that wasn't going to happen. So I think it was probably more of like a political move on their side saying, hey, just so we can say that we drafted you and so you can say that you got drafted, and just maybe a tie to our organization, we're just going to show you that there is interest. We're going to draft you in the 50th round, knowing most of the players drafted in the 50th round probably aren't going to sign, especially out of high school.
Was there any negotiation? Was there any?
No.
Because that was back when there was draft and follows back then, right?
Yeah, there was.
So was there ever a chance of like, hey, do you want to go the draft and follow route?
No, they knew. Like the second that, first of all, after the first day was done, I didn't expect to get drafted. And then when I got the phone call to get drafted, it was more, that's cool. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to go to college. We'll talk to you in 3 years.
Yeah, I want to back up before we jump into college, but because we love touching on the youth side of sports, and obviously you're coaching, youth now. At what point did you think I was going to get drafted, or it was a possibility of getting drafted? And like when you were a kid, was your kind of existence to get drafted, or was it just playing baseball because it was fun and something you loved and you just kept working at it and you could kind of see that trajectory starting to happen in the future?
Yeah, it was all of the above, right? Like we've all played with guys that they didn't necessarily love the game, right? Like they were just really good at it, and they were able to make a career out of it because they were really good at it. Like I was, I eat, sleep, breathe baseball since the time I was like 3 years old. I loved watching it. Like I would sit down and watch a full game as a kid. When you're given an opportunity to do a project in school or write a paper in school, it was always baseball related. So like I've had this tunnel vision since the time I was really little. So it was kind of all of the above. I always loved the game, and I always wanted to make a career out of it. So yes, it was, I want to get drafted. So whether that is straight out of high school or whether I have to take the college route, professional baseball is something that is the ultimate goal. That is what I want to do. I want to be a big leaguer. Was
there other things you were doing as a kid, other sports you were playing, where you just knew from a young age baseball is what you wanted to do? Yeah,
I played a little basketball. I could shoot a little bit, not with a hand in my face. I couldn't dribble very well. I feel like I was better at shooting from the perimeter and making 3-pointers than I was at making a layup. So I wasn't the most physical kid. My parents were originally from Michigan. So when they moved here to Texas, they didn't understand like all the football hoopla, right? That's not the environment that they were raised in. So they didn't raise me in that environment. And like once I got to pro ball, and everybody was just like, "Oh, you're from Texas? Like how was football?" I'm like, "I don't know. I never played." So I got such a hard time that I was from Texas and never played football. So yeah, a little bit of basketball, maybe a few years of soccer, but baseball was it.
You played, in high school, teammate wise, you had a couple guys you played with in high school that played in the big leagues.
Yeah, Chris George. So I made varsity as a sophomore, and it was only because somebody failed.
Yeah.
And it was as a pitcher. Like I only got 8 at bats my sophomore year, But Chris George was our number one. He was a lefty, and at the time, for being a number one guy, and he was taken 31st overall in '98. He was a lefty that maybe topped out at 91, 92. And, he wasn't really able to maintain that velocity once he got to the big leagues. And I think he made it 2 or 3 years. But, man, you talk about an outstanding – he went 15-0 his senior year with like a 1 ERA basically. Like he was dominant, and he was a polished lefty for a high school senior. And it was a great example for me to watch. And then Josh Barfield was a year behind me.
Yeah.
And he kind of flew through the minor leagues. He had a great minor league career, got to the big leagues pretty young. I think he was a Rookie of the Year candidate in '06, I wanted to say.
Cleveland?
And Cleveland. Yeah. Well, he got to the big leagues with the Padres, got traded to Cleveland. Right. And then kind of the same thing, maybe 2 or 3 years in the big leagues, which I guess is probably more or less the average career in the big leagues. So both of them, had their time and were great high school players.
That's awesome.
So you leave, you get drafted 50th round. You obviously say, hey, I'm not getting drafted. I want to go develop in college. You go to Baylor. Let's go back to what the hell happened. You go from 50th round to 17th overall pick.
17th overall pick.
17th overall pick in 3 years.
I guess so. Part of it was just what I mentioned. I was 175 pounds. So I remember Coach Smith sitting there in my living room when he was recruiting me. And I was just like, well, my goal by the time that I get out of college is I want to be 200 pounds. I want to gain some muscle, and then figure out how to hit. Obviously, you know that you're going to go to a summer league and get a wood bat in your hands, which is crazy. The kids today, I mean, they start swinging wooden bats when they're like 14, 15 years old. We did a wood bat tournament with the team that I coach, 15U team last fall. So I'm like, man, things have advanced big time. And then just getting used to seeing like better stuff, right? Guys that are, you'll face some guys in college back in the day. Everybody now, I feel like, at least in the bigger conferences, but you'll face some guys that are throwing mid-90s, and you'll face some of the better players from around the country. I did have the opportunity to play in Cape Cod, both summers that I played, and basically I had the wood bat knocked out of my hand facing some of the better pitchers in the country between my freshman and sophomore year. And then I go back. I had an idea of what it was all about. That's when I was starting to understand like what strength and conditioning was doing for my body. It was that second summer in the Cape Cod League that I did finally reach my goal of getting to 200 pounds for the first time. And but I was also like understanding my own mechanics a little bit, which still I was getting there, but I was not a finished product by any means in college. But I was blessed with good hands. There's just the ability to take the bat to the ball. Like I could put the bat on the ball, but I had a really bad lower half. Like I kind of, you think of like how Ichiro used to hit like as a front foot hitter, but I didn't have that type of speed. I was supposed to be more of like a power type of hitter as a corner outfielder, right? And that just like, I couldn't figure that out because I couldn't stay behind the baseball. So that started to, I think my brain started to process that my second year in Cape Cod. I started to be able to get to good fastballs a little bit better. And so I think the hit tool and the power, even though the power numbers weren't necessarily there, I was more of a doubles guy. And so things started to click a little bit more, and then I rode that into my junior year, which was a solid year in college.
Was there a teammate or was there a coach in the Cape Cod that kind of, taught you mechanically what you're describing, or is this just a kind of trial and error? And you mentioned growing up, baseball was your life. You watched games. Was some of it just influence of people you watched on TV and said, "Hey, I want to try to hit like that guy"?
It was little bits and pieces of things. Like I don't know if there was a coach until I worked with Rudy Jaramillo when I got traded to Texas in the big leagues, and I was 25 years old by then. Like I think I figured some things out. I didn't understand the why behind what I was figuring out until I was 25 years old here in Texas. There would be like little bits and pieces of, like Wareham Gateman, that was the team that I played with in the Cape Cod League.
Okay.
I remember, like talking to some of the interns at times, and they'd be like, "Oh, all the scouts, they were speaking highly of you, but they were like, oh, you can." They were telling us you can hit, but you're more of a breaking ball hitter. You're not necessarily a fastball hitter. And I'm like, huh. And like, as a competitor and as a player, like, you kind of take stuff like that personally, right?
Yeah.
You're like, all right, I'm going to figure out how to hit a fastball. And it wasn't for lack of bat speed, right? Like, I knew I had enough bat speed to be successful. Like, I could put on a show in batting practice. I couldn't translate it to a game. And I knew I had multiple coaches tell me that I was more of a front foot hitter. I just had nobody to tell me how to figure that out.
Well, it's also hard too, because, as a player, like, I'm sure that we've all had things like movement wise, like in our mechanics, whether it be pitching or hitting or whatever, it's not like you're hitting with a mirror in front of you. You can't really see it. You have to be able to feel it.
Right.
And you have someone else telling you what they see, and you're like, I don't feel what you're it doesn't feel like I'm doing that. And so, especially when you get in a competitive environment like the Cape, where it's like, hey, man, I'm just trying to be on time. Who were some of the guys that you played against in the Cape, or like pitchers that you faced in the Cape that were like dudes?
Yeah, like, did you play with Aaron Hill in Toronto?
It was a little bit before me.
Yeah. Okay.
I know Aaron Hill.
So I played with him my first year there, and he was an incredible player.
Where did he go to school?
He went to LSU. And he was a first rounder, and he started to figure things out, got to the big leagues pretty quickly. And then I think he had a few 30 home run seasons, had a nice, I would say that he probably had a 10-year career in the big leagues. He was a good player, second baseman, athletic, kind of short, stocky build, but really good player. Matt Merton was actually like the guy in the Cape Cod League the 2 years that I was there. He was on my team. He was a big, strong guy. Like, I was trying to figure out how to gain weight. He was probably 225 pounds. He could run. He was at a Georgia Tech. The guys that I played against, like, say the number one prospect the first year, another Toronto Blue Jay, Russ Adams, like, he was kind of in and out. Like, he was a supremely athletic, through right, bat left, middle infield type of guy. Number one prospect of the league. Didn't end up having much of a big league career, I don't think. Tim Stauffer was like the number one pitcher in the league the second year I was there. He had, I don't think he had a very extensive big league career as well.
I remember that name though.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think. I don't know if there are any like superstar guys.
Because your college draft class, or when you in 02, when you saw
03 was when I got drafted.
03 was your draft class. Okay, we were wrong on that one, because we were looking at the 02 draft.
I was gonna back up real quick. I've talked about. Obviously, I didn't play at a big-time school like Baylor. I played at a smaller school. But me playing summer collegiate ball in the Northwoods League is when I felt like I belonged and that I knew that I could make it, even before I got drafted. Did you have a similar experience going to, like, the Cape and being around, guys from LSU and these big-time schools? Yeah. Not that Baylor wasn't a big-time school, but it's really like playing a collegiate all-star game every single day. And you get to side yourself up against who they consider as the best college players at the time.
I think it was one of those things where, like I said, I struggled my first year there, but that definitely put a little doubt in my mind on what professional baseball was going to look like. Now, you play against a variety of players in high school and college, and you see, like, you start to play against guys that get drafted, right? And I think being from Texas and starting to see these guys that are going to professional baseball, I'm like, well, I know I'm good enough to get drafted. And I think there was a strong belief in my mind that I would get drafted. I had no idea what round, right? Now, the question mark was, once I get to professional baseball, what's that going to look like? Am I going to be able to succeed once I get to professional baseball? So I think that first year in the Cape and then going to the second year, then having some success, I was like, okay, now I know that I can be, say, a top 10 rounder and get drafted somewhat higher. But the question remained, what's that going to look like once I get to professional baseball? And then once that happened, it was like, all right, success at the lower levels. But then once I start to get bumped up to higher levels, facing guys throwing in the mid 90s consistently, better breaking stuff, throwing any pitch in any count. All right, now this is where the challenge is to start to adjust and figure things out.
So take us there. You have success year 2 in the Cape. You come back for your junior year at Baylor, have an amazing year, All-American, get drafted 17th overall. What's that feeling like when the phone rings? Who's with you? The conversation with your parents. What's that feeling like?
So we so we went to a regional with Baylor at Southern Miss. And you talk about a dude, like in that regional, we played against Ricky Weeks, who was, I think he was the number 2 pick in the draft that year. Delman Young was first.
He went to Southern?
Southern, yeah. So you talk about lightning hands through the strike zone. I mean, he was an incredible college player, athlete, power, 5-tool player. So we end up winning the regional. We're going to the super regional. I was named most outstanding player of the regional, so I'm coming off of a high, right? We come home late Sunday night. We have an off day Monday, and then practice Tuesday to ramp up for the super regional in Baton Rouge against LSU. And so I spent all day on the phone with my advisor, agent to be that Monday, basically knowing that there's no games left to be played because the draft was on Tuesday, right? Off day Monday, draft on Tuesday, going into the regional that weekend. And he's like, all right, here's what I got for you. So he's been kind of keeping this information from me so I didn't have to think about, so I could compartmentalize, not think about anything professionally, keep my mind with my teammates, Baylor University, trying to win a national championship.
How difficult is that, by the way, knowing you've put yourself in a position where, like, man, I'm an All-American, I went out and did everything I did. In your mind, you're like, I'm going to get drafted high, and not, putting yourself in the future, but staying present with your guys and trying to, win a national championship.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it was awful. Like, I feel like the way that it's done today, not having the draft until All-Star weekend in mid-July, like, that's the way it should be. Like, it was a tour. My brain was all over the place, right? Not to mention, like, I know that I'm starting to get interest. Like, the Red Sox, who ended up drafting me, like, I knew they were high on. Like, I went through this. I had like it was like an hour and a half interview on the phone at the regional at Southern Mississippi.
While you're trying to get ready to play.
Yeah, exactly. So I had a long interview on the phone. So my agent gets on the phone with me that Monday, and he said, "You're from the homework I've done and from talking to teams, you're probably going to go as high as 17th or as low as 31st." And I think both of those might have been the Red Sox. I think 31st was the sandwich round pick. He's like, you kind of have options, and you could even, like, the Indians are interested, and they would be willing to take you at 18. They're trying to budget because they have 2 first-round picks. And actually, like, the next morning, the day of the draft, the Indians called my agent back, and they were like, well, because we have 2 first-round picks, we're trying to save money. We would be willing to take you at 11, but we would want to sign you for underslot, and not give you the signing bonus that typically you would get at 11. And just being a baseball fan, knowing who the Red Sox were in Major League Baseball, being a big market team playing in Boston, that was too good to pass up. So we said, thanks, but no thanks to the Indians. And even though there's like this pre-draft agreement, you don't know if it's going to happen or not till it happens. So my whole family, they drive up from Houston. There's in the Hilton Hotel, which was like the only big, nice hotel in Waco at the time. They had a sports bar, restaurant, and on the first level of the hotel. So we were there, get the phone call from my agent, because at the time, this is 2003. I don't think the draft was televised until 2009. And so they just do the picks over the internet. And so my agent called right before 17. The pick 17, and it's basically like a computerized voice, like just spitting out the draft picks. And sure enough, number 17, and they say my name, Boston Red Sox. So there was just a moment of celebration. It was actually an exhausting day, and then I had to go to practice after that and then prepare for a week at LSU. And I'm just like, oh man, I'm so excited. I'm playing professional baseball. I'm going to get that opportunity, but I want to go win a super regional, go to the College World Series, go play in Omaha. So we ended up losing the regional. So my college career ended that week. So like bittersweet, right? Like these great 3 years that I've had with these teammates and at this school, it's finally over. But ultimately I get to go do what I've always wanted to do and start my professional career.
Do you feel like it's changed now? I mean, obviously the draft has got pushed back, rightfully so, but is there any conversation with your advisor, agent at the time, maybe yourself, your family, where maybe you decide you're not going to continue playing, or that was never an option? Once you get drafted, like, because you don't want to get hurt, like not playing in the super regional after you get drafted.
Yeah, no, that was never like, I care less. Like that's where I guess we're going back to the original conversation. Like you play the game because you love it, or you playing it for money or for, ultimately the goal was, but and when you're 21 years old, like your body is made of rubber, right? Like there was no part of me that was like, I'm going to get hurt or there's going to be any type of injury there. Like I'm going to go play hard. I'm going to like, as much as being a professional baseball player and, all of those goals that come with it, those are on the table. Like also one of the goals my entire career was along this ladder and this every stepping stone. Like I want to play in Omaha. Like, yeah, I want to do that. And I'll say to this day, like that's probably the only thing that's missing that I never got to do. I was never a major league all-star. That would have been a cool thing to be, but I'm not heartbroken over that. I feel like if there's one thing at the top of my list, what do you wish that you got to do in your career that you didn't? I would say play at Rosenblatt.
The old Rosenblatt.
Yeah, well, join the club. God. We don't have all-stars.
Yeah, dude, I never even played in a regional.
Yeah.
But yeah, playing at the old Rosenblatt. So you get drafted by Boston, like unbelievable organization, and this is 2003. So that year they get beat by New York. Mm-hmm. Grady Little's last year. They hire this young manager by the name of Terry Francona in 2004. And so you're in the minor leagues like when the curse is broken.
Right.
What is that like being, because obviously you weren't in the big leagues yet. You broke in, you had your first taste in 2005.
Yep.
But you're there during like this transition to this young GM by the name of Theo Epstein and Terry Francona and like all these. So like you're kind of like at ground zero in Fort Myers and all this stuff for like this huge transition in baseball history. Yeah. Like, did you have any idea, because you're what, 24 at the time, 23?
Yeah.
And you're like, what you were experiencing or kind of what was happening in the landscape?
I did to a certain extent. Like, I don't know if you completely understand it until you get to the big leagues and understand, like, when you play a big league game in Fenway or in Yankee Stadium in the midst of that rivalry, like, I don't think you truly understand it until that happens, right? But the way the coaches talked up the rivalry in the minor leagues, like, you started to get a feel for it, right?
Okay.
And the more time, like, Red Sox and Yankees play each other at every level, whether I was in the New York Penn League, the Florida State League, the Eastern League, you play each other at every level. And the way that, like, the fans in the Northeast, the way that they get into these games, even minor league games, you start to get an understanding for it. So you're like, all right, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
You see the Red Sox and Yankees, like, even if I wasn't in big league camp, there was a few times where I got to go to the, whether we're going to Tampa or we're playing in Fort Myers, we're part of the Red Sox and Yankees. You can see the way that the fans get fired up for it. So I'm thinking, all right, this is a little bit more than you're typically used to, right? And so,
Do you think that was peak rivalry? Like that period of time? Do you think that was peak rivalry?
For sure. You look at those Yankees teams, right?
Yeah.
You look at all the great players they had, Clemens, Pettit, Bernie Williams, Jeter, obviously.
But then on the Boston side, Pedro plunking everybody.
So you're talking about two teams loaded with superstars, Hall of Famers on both sides, right? You could say like chip on your shoulder arrogance on both sides.
Yeah.
There's brawls, there's fights. Like, this is peak moments in the rivalry for sure. And like a little story about 2003. So it was cool on both sides. Like it was cool the way that it brought us as teammates together because we're all in instructional league down in Fort Myers. And I'm assuming both of you guys went to instructional league. Is awful. Like, like instructional league, for those that don't know, it's like a spring training that happens for younger players.
After the season's over.
So you get a month of rest.
Yeah, you get extra baseball.
Instructional league is during September. So you're just playing baseball every day. There's no energy to it.
It's extremely hot and muggy in Florida.
It's hot. It's awful. It's just kind of a go through the motions type of deal where you're just working on your craft every day, but are you really getting better?
Yeah.
You are, but it's just kind of like you're paying your dues at lower levels.
Yeah.
So if the Red Sox were to win and go to the World Series, well, they're flying all our coaches there and Instructs is over, right? So there's a little added bonus for us.
Oh, nice.
So we're all of us together. We're all at a restaurant. We're out. We're watching this game. We're eating, and we're hanging on every pitch, right? And the Red Sox have this big lead in Game 7. We're like, we're gonna be flying home. We're going. Instructs is over, right? And then Pedro starts to give it up. Grady Little leaves him in. And we're like, all right, this thing's starting to unravel a little bit. And then Aaron Boone hits the homer. We're all heartbroken. I still remember the feeling the day after. Like we're all standing around stretching, and it was like silent. Like it was like somebody had just died, right? Like it's just that negative feeling on a baseball field. And so and then we go back the next year. I don't think we got to leave early because I went to Instructs again in 2004. And I don't even remember what happened. But so it was like the exact opposite. The Red Sox move on.
Yeah.
They beat the Yankees. But
that's pretty cool. So in 2003, the year you get drafted.
Right.
You're at some restaurant in Fort Myers for Instructs, watching the guys that like you're aspiring to wear that uniform, be in that situation with other guys that are aspiring to do that. So who were some of those guys that you were watching it with that, because I know you played the minor leagues with Jacoby, right?
Yeah. He hadn't been drafted yet. He didn't get drafted until 2005.
Okay.
So this is more the 03-04 crowd. This is like Case and Gabbard, who got traded with me from Boston to Texas. Matt Merton, Chris Durbin, a guy that never got to the big leagues. He was a college teammate of mine. I'm trying to think of who else is in there. Maybe not everyday household names, guys that played in the big leagues for a long time, guys that had a cup of coffee, like maybe Charlie Zink and Knuckleballer. Trying to think who else was in there.
You guys all, it's just wild because a lot of people don't, there's 25, 26 guys on a big league roster.
Yeah.
But like how many guys start out at A-ball?
Or maybe Hanley Ramirez is a guy I could throw in there. Like we had a pretty good squad in AA in 05. So he was one of them that was on that team. Dustin Pedroia, he would have been there the next year in 04, but not in 03.
But I love hearing that because it just proves that the draft is such an imperfect science, and typically Instruct is designed for your younger players, but usually your ones you think are considered to be big leaguers and your best ones. And the fact that you were at a restaurant watching this, memorable game with teammates that were supposed to get to big leagues and you can't remember a lot of them just proves how difficult it is to really make it to the big leagues.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful thing. And for both of y'all's stories, neither of y'all played at big Division I schools, right? Or were big time prospects, high draft picks, and yet you both have these great careers in the major leagues. So, most people don't realize that probably half of the first rounders every year in baseball make a significant impact in the big leagues, right? And half of them, some of them never even get there.
I'd probably say less than half.
Yeah. I mean, it depending on what year it is. You take a year like the 2005 draft. You mentioned Ellsbury, McCutcheon. That was the year. Justin Upton, I believe. That year was loaded with big time major league impact.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now that we're in that conversation, do you remember the guys in your draft class? Because I think we did our research, but I think we got the year wrong. It's always hard because it's like 2002, 2003. It's like, when do you get drafted?
So I was looking at 2003. 2003 was like Jared Saltalamacchia was in that class. There's a lot of guys at the top of the draft who didn't.
Because we looked at
guys that were like from 17 on. Adam Jones.
Yeah,
dude, I was just looking at him. He got drafted as a shortstop / pitcher by the Mariners.
What was when we were in here yesterday? We were looking at
02. We were looking at 02.
We thought you got drafted in 02, but it was really you played the 02. It was 2003.
Yeah,
draft.
02 was like Greinke, Prince.
Yes.
Which is,
who else was in that class?
03 was relatively weak. Like, I think one of the better first rounders, to put it in perspective, and respectable, good major league career. And I think he got maybe some Hall of Fame votes, but Nick Markakis.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And he got drafted
Chad Billingsley.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Guys that maybe were an all-star multiple times, but
dude, here's a name for you. 20th overall pick, Chad Cordero.
I think he was probably the second guy to get to the big leagues out of that draft class.
Expos.
Yeah.
Do you think it was harder to project back then because maybe less technology? Do you think the less exposure to wood bat?
Yeah.
The metal bats were a lot different back then than they were now? I mean,
I would say all of the above. I tell people to this day, I would never be like a scout or a front office guy making big decisions because baseball is the hardest sport in the world to evaluate. Like, you look at, obviously, I work for the Rangers right now. And so I'm always like, I am more familiar with their history and team history than any other team. And that's whether it's big league level, whether it's whether we're talking about draft. So if you look at the draft for the Rangers from like 2000 to 2015, 2020, right? And just the misses, like the misses in the draft. Because even like some of the best drafted players were Ian Kinsler, Mitch Moreland. Both of those guys were 17th rounders.
Yeah.
Right. So you're getting lucky a little bit later in the draft, but you're missing on your first rounders. And those are the guys that you need to hit on. Like, I think one year they had to, they took like a lefty. His name was Casey Kiker.
Yeah.
And I don't think he got to the big leagues ever. And I think they took him over Lincecum. So that'll just, go to show you how difficult evaluating, amateur talent.
So you have this information, you have this wealth of knowledge, and you're coaching young kids. What do you try to tell them about that? As you get drafted on tools, but what's the separator? And obviously, is that something you teach to them? Because a lot of times you're drafting guys off their potential of their tools, but do you know their work ethic? Do you know their mindset? Do you know their, willingness to make adjustments and make changes and, things like that? Is that things that you try to help these young kids understand?
So it's both, right? Like I have a hard time, and I could go off on a big tangent here because
please do.
Because like, I'm more like I try to instill just faith-based qualities and character qualities into my teams more, as much or more than baseball, right? Because we know the statistics. We know that the likelihood of even one guy on any of the teams that I coach playing professional baseball someday, much less college baseball, it's slim to none, right? Maybe college baseball. As we get to this older group, that doesn't necessarily mean Division I. That could be junior college. That could be, lower divisions, not Division I. But and I try to make sure that they understand the little things like in the game, whether it's just, and I always tell them, one of the things I tell them, I said, if I'm a professional scout and I come watch you play baseball, one of the things I'm going to be impressed by the velocity that your arm produces. I'm going to be impressed by how hard the ball comes off your bat, how hard you can hit the ball. But if I'm looking for a separator in how good of a baseball player you are and your baseball IQ and the little things that are going to separate you, at least my position players, I'm going to watch you run the bases.
Yeah.
And I'm going to see the way that you pay attention. So that's why I'm always talking to them. I'm like, when you're on first, when you're on second, make sure to look in at the signs so that, like, you guys that are base stealers, even you guys, like I always tell my guys, like, there's a difference between being a fast base runner and being a good base runner.
Yeah.
So I'm always saying, pick up the patterns from the pitcher. Always look at the signs if you can, because we have 15-year-old teams that use pitch comms these days, if you can believe that. Yeah.
That's wild.
But if you looking at the signs, if you see two fingers or if you see wiggle, those are great pitches to run on. So make sure to pay attention to that and pay attention when you're in the dugout. What's he doing to his breaking ball? Is he bouncing it? What's he doing to his changeup? Is he bouncing it? Because the catcher's obviously going to have a harder time throwing you out on those pitches. So it's just little things. Do you go first to third? Are you going to be aggressive? Are you going to be tentative? Those sorts of things. So yeah. So obviously character, those types of qualities that are going to stay with them throughout life, whether on the baseball field or not.
Yeah.
And then the little separators like that, because yeah, you can be a great player, but you know, everybody's obsessed with at 10, 11U. Well, is my son on a majors team? Is he on AAA? He's on AA. And now having a chance to go through this once with my older son, and now I'm going through it. I'm going at 11U all over again. I'm like, I'm telling all these families that are asking me questions about what, you know, do we need to be a majors team? I'm like, here's the deal. Most of the good majors players, I don't know if most is a good way to put it. A lot of the great players that the first time I went through this at 11U, they're not even playing baseball anymore. Yeah. Like they didn't even try out for their high school team. They're playing football, they're playing basketball, they're playing other sports.
Yep. Yeah, we're starting to kind of go through it now. Like my oldest is 8.5, and then our two, my middle and his son, are on the same 6-year-old baseball team. So we're kind of navigating that stuff. But let's go back for a second. And so you're at Instructs back-to-back years, 03, 04, this transition in Boston. You get your first taste of the big leagues in 2005.
Big league camp that year?
It's actually 06. I don't want to correct you, but
it was 06.
Correct this.
Yeah.
Do you go to big league camp
I went to,
after Instructs in the second year?
No.
Or?
So I went to minor league camp 04, 05. I had a very mediocre minor league career, especially for being a first rounder. First, I got put on the 40-man November of 05. So I went to big league camp in 06 and then got called up for the first time in September.
What the hell is that feeling like, going to big league camp for the first time with knowing, you know, baseball history, the cast of characters that's in that clubhouse?
So you're basically sitting back and not trying to ruffle feathers, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's like, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have changed my mindset. And I'll tell you one guy that really, and I've talked about it a decent amount in opportunities like this or even on the air at times, Dustin Pedroia really helped, and observing him helped to change my mindset. Because I remember a time in 04, and I had a bad year in 04, but we're facing Jonathan Broxton. You guys remember that guy?
Yeah.
Big old dude,
donkey.
Through 97, 98, and he was a starter in the minor leagues, and he was like the Dodgers' number 2 prospect. And I'd be like, oh man, like, we're facing Jonathan Broxton today. He's the number 2 prospect. You know, he's got this type of fastball. He's got this type of breaking ball. That's kind of what my thought process, my mindset was. Well, later that year, we draft Dustin Pedroia with our first pick. And he starts off in low A, crushes it, gets promoted, and he's my teammate for the last month of the season. And he's like, who's this guy we're facing tonight? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to hit a line drive past his ear and I'm going to run down to first base yelling at him. And Dustin Pedroia is obviously 5'8", 5'9", and I'm like, gosh, like it's really like it's good to be humble, but I think that's not necessarily the definition of humility. Like I am making this guy that I'm facing out to be a Hall of Famer before he's even in the big leagues. I'm out before I get to the plate, right?
Yeah.
And this guy's this big, in his mindset, he's got a chip on his shoulder. And from a mental standpoint, like he's already won. Like he's going out there and he's gonna go tear him apart. I'm like, man, I need to learn from this guy. So more than anything, like I tried to stay quiet amongst all these guys and not be noticed, which was funny because there was a day like we were going on a road trip to Bradenton and to play against the Pirates. And so I get on the bus, like usually I was one of the first guys on the bus, whatever. I was rushing around, bus is full. Most of the veteran guys drove. It was like a 2-hour trip, right? And Curt Schilling's pitching that day. And I go, like all these seats are full on the bus. So I go to the very back seat with not a sliver of big league time, right? No big league time. The back of the bus is usually reserved for guys that are the big leaguers, especially because most of the seats are like 2 seats, right? But the very back is 3 seats. So it's reserved for a guy that's got some big league time. So I'm kind of like, I'm like on the edge of my seat. I'm like, if I see a guy get on, like I'm getting up and giving up my seat, right? Well, eventually I see Schilling get on the bus. He walks past the first few rows and I get up immediately. I go find a younger guy to sit with, right? And I double up. And then I'm not starting the game. So I'm on the bench. I'm just caught up in conversation, talking baseball with somebody. And I get like a tap on my shoulder. It's like, hey, you're the guy today, huh, Murph? And I'm like, what? And to begin with, the dugouts in Bradenton are small. You know, spring training games, you carry a big roster. So like some of the younger guys are going to have to stand anyway. And Schilling's pitching. He just got done throwing in the bullpen. He's getting ready for the game. And it was him. He's like, you're the guy today. He's like, get out of my seat. I'm like, oh my gosh. So, and that was a little bit more of like the way that younger guys were treated by older guys. Like it was blunt. It was like, this is the way that like, we're going to love on you eventually, but you're going to pay your dues and you're going to know your spot. So I was like, yes, sir, Mr. Schilling, you know, that type of thing. No, I didn't say that, but that's kind of like my body language. I was like, oh yeah, take my seat. Like I'll pay attention next time. But he was great to me in a variety of other ways throughout the little time that I played with him. So Curt Schilling was a guy. Jason Varitek, like at the end of the 2006 season, last game, like it was raining that day. I think we only played 5 innings. I don't think he had a good year. The Red Sox finished in 3rd in 2006. And it's just like everybody's ready to go. Like everybody's ready to get out of there and go home. And I'm kind of like going around the clubhouse, shaking hands with guys, have a good off season, you know, see ya. And like when I went to Varitek's locker to shake his hand, it was like still game face, right? Like dead serious. And he was like, next year, come ready. I'm like, man, this guy, like, he doesn't take a minute off, right? So Schilling, Varitek, I had a chance to play with many, Big Papi, like all of these big time names that at the time, like, you know, it's a big deal, but even then, you know, 20 years later, I'm like, wow, that was a really big deal. Like those guys that I got to rub shoulders against and come up with.
I mean, you think about like that organization, probably one of the 2 most storied franchises in baseball and all of sports too. Yeah. And like that's probably, you know, outside of trading, you know, Babe Ruth to the Yankees, like that period of time is like the most storied time in that franchise's history.
Yeah.
And so you got to witness it. And then in 2006, you make your debut. And then coming into 2007, you're like, all right, like you're knocking at the door to like be a part of that like next group.
Yeah.
Now JD Drew comes in. Was JD Drew there in 2006?
No. So he was signed as a free agent in 2007. So I'm thinking, all right, Trot Nixon left as a free agent after 2006. So in my mind, I'm like, do I have a chance to make this team, right?
Yeah.
And then in December, I read the news that they signed JD Drew to like this 5-year, $85 million deal. At the time, that was a big deal, right? Yeah. And I'm like, well, they got Mannion left. They got Coco Crisp in center. And I did play center field in the minor leagues. So I'm like, do I have a chance to, you know, to overtake Coco there? Yeah, but I had a pretty good mindset or idea, even though you don't understand the way that everything works.
Yeah.
I also understood, man, if I'm going to really break into the big leagues and have a chance to be a consistent everyday player, it's probably not going to be with this organization.
Okay, so you were already kind of feeling that going into that 07 season.
Yeah.
So you break camp. Do you break camp in Pawtucket?
Yeah, I went back to AAA.
You went back to Pawtucket.
Ended the season in the big leagues. Knew most likely I was going back to AAA, and that was the case.
Yeah. And so 07 starts rolling. Boston's playing pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Going up to the deadline that year, the trade deadline. Because the deadline that year was the 31st, right?
Right.
Did you know, or like, were you being told by either like farm directors or agent, or like, hey, there's a pretty good chance you're getting traded, or was it like kind of out of left field?
No, there was nothing, right?
Okay.
And even going back, so I talked about how I knew my best opportunity was going to be with an organization other than the Red Sox.
Yeah.
Going back to the 06 season.
Okay.
And I had a pretty good year that year. Like, I didn't light it up as far as like home runs were concerned, but I hit 40 doubles in a minor league season, which is respectable, right?
Yeah.
I remember in 06, starting at about July 20th, I kind of went in the tank because I remember looking in the stands every day and seeing how many scouts were there and wanting to get traded so badly that I think I exhausted myself mentally. And then I think things started to take off after July 31st. Well, deadline's come and gone. I'm still here. So now I can focus on improving my performance, because once September 1st comes and rosters are expanded, I want to try to get to the big leagues, right?
Yeah.
So 07, I feel like that kind of happened a little bit again. Although I knew that I needed to make an adjustment there, but I wanted to get out of there. I was just like, this just isn't going to happen here in Boston. I got called up for 4 days in late June and then got sent back down. And then like a week or two later, I could have gotten called up again, but you'd mentioned Jacoby Ellsbury. He got called up over me.
Okay.
And so like writing's on the wall, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is going to be their guy. I'm not going to be their guy. So what do I have to do to get out of here? So my agent actually happened to be in town. We're in Columbus, Ohio, playing the Yankees organization at the time. And we're sitting there eating wings the night of the 30th. And my agent's like, all right, I've broken down. Like, I'm kind of looking at the Red Sox. They're a good team. They're definitely going to be buyers. They could probably use a little bullpen help. Gagne over in Texas is lighting it up. Rangers aren't going to go to the playoffs. They definitely need to do something here, make a move. Like, that would be the perfect mix, right? You go to Texas, Gagne goes to Boston.
That was just him connecting dots. It wasn't like,
for sure.
Okay.
Yep. I don't know if he had made phone calls or anything like that. So then the next day, kind of business as usual, going through early pregame routine. I'm in my hotel room. Brandon Moss was my teammate and my roommate at the time. And we're kind of like we're both like taking naps, getting ready to go to the ballpark. And there's no MLB network at the time.
Yeah.
So there was maybe like ESPN had like a 30-minute or an hour-long trade deadline special leading up to the deadline. So I'm laying on the couch. We have the TV on. Peter Gammons comes on. He's mentioning all the possible deals, and he mentions Boston. Boston does need bullpen help. Now, what I've been hearing is they might go after Eric Gagne. David Murphy is a guy that's been mentioned as a possible return. So I'm like, I go from taking a nap and I shoot up, and I'm like listening to this like crazy. I call my wife, who is due to be induced in like 4 days to give birth to our first child.
Where is she at the time?
She is in Providence, Rhode Island, at our apartment. And so just like this rush of like adrenaline, excitement, everything. I go to the ballpark and I'm like trying to get this nervous energy out. So I suit out, I get in my pregame clothes, and my hitting coach comes by. He's like, hey, don't get dressed yet. He's like, he He's like, you can't come hit. And I'm like, what do you got for me? He's like, that's all I can tell you. You can't come hit. So obviously I know that something's in the works. I finally, get, the full, it's confirmed. It's confirmed an hour or two later that yes, I have been traded to Texas. So I'm excited. I'm like, I don't even know what to think. My mind's rushing, but I'm excited to be a Texas boy, going back home to my home state, getting an opportunity on a team that is more of a retooling team that's reloading, going to give their young guys a chance rather than a team that they're competing every year, every at bat, every spot on that 25-man roster is important. I'm not going to get that spot in Boston.
Did you, once you got traded, you have a conversation with someone in the organization with Texas, whether manager, front office?
Yes.
And do they tell you you're going to the big leagues?
No. So the first phone call I got was from Scott Service, who was the farm director at the time. And I guess John Daniels was talking to media in the background. And so they're like, all right, we're going to send you to Fresno. And I'm like, I'm in Columbus, right? And they're like, yeah, so we're going to fly you out directly to Fresno. I'm like, all right, well, there's a catch here. My wife is due to give birth, right? So he's like, all right, let me go talk to JD real quick. So they talk. He's like, all right, here's what we're going to do. Go back, tend to your wife, have the baby, go do everything that you need to. We'll give you 3 days. And then basically where we are on the calendar, we're going to fly you out to Sacramento I think it was on a Monday. Okay. So like I go home for I had 3 days off. The baby was born. I get another 3 days off. So I'm like off for a week basically. Yeah. And then they fly me I flew from Boston all the way to Sacramento and get to play in a few minor league games. I did get called up at 2 days into that series.
And you don't go back down until obviously the end of your career.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty amazing feat because you think about some of the best players to ever play, they go back to the minor leagues. So
they burn all their options.
Yeah, but a lot of the best players to ever play, they get to the big leagues at 22, 21, 22. So there's a learning process involved, right? Like I'm already 25 years old, mediocre minor league career for a first rounder. Like I'm kind of I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, man, if I'm going to be a big leaguer, if I'm going to make an impact, the clock is ticking and I need to do this now. There was a sense of urgency to say the least.
So there was some moments of doubt,
yeah,
along that minor league journey, the up and down. You're looking at your clock. I'm 25 years old.
Yep.
First rounder. I'm supposed to be established at this point.
Yep.
You have some doubts that it might not ever happen.
I thought I knew when I got traded to Texas that they're not going to just trade for me and not give me a chance. I knew at some point I would get a chance. I didn't know that it would be so quickly. Maybe it wouldn't be, this is say August 7th or 8th when I start playing in AAA for the Rangers. So it may not be until September 1st that I get my chance, but my mindset is that the second they do give me that chance, I'm going to be ready. And I'm going to take advantage of every, I'm going to put a stranglehold on this job possibility to be a major league regular.
Who is so you said Scott Service is the one who called you, his farm director, JD's the GM.
Yeah.
Was Buck Showalter the manager?
No, that was Wash's first year in Texas.
First year, okay. Yep. Yeah, I know because I know that was pretty close to that time. So, all right, so Wash has got his young team. Who are the outfielders that are currently there when you get to Texas?
So Nelson Cruz was one of them, but he wasn't Nelson Cruz yet.
Yeah.
Every now and then he'd run into one and he'd show off, his power that he could hit a ball 450 feet. You'd watch him throw from the outfield. You knew he had a cannon. He had speed at the time. He could steal bases. He was a good defender. He could do everything. He just was really struggling to put it together at the major league level. And he was not, even from a personality standpoint, he was quieter and wasn't the confident guy that I came to know a year or two later, and that would last through the rest of his career. Marlon Byrd was kind of a journeyman guy, had some time with Philly. He had spent a good amount of time in AAA that year, had since been called up, and he was doing well, not necessarily hitting for power, but solid overall player. Jason Botts was like, I don't know if you guys remember him. He was always one of those guys that he was always in the top 10 Rangers prospects. He looked like Ivan Drago from Rocky, Dolph Lundgren. Like, he literally looked like him. He was a switch hitter, wasn't a great defender, but could really hit. He could draw a walk. And he was one of those guys that just never panned out at the major league level. Trying to think if there was anybody else. So those were the guys that I was competing with. So I knew that. I was like, I got a chance at this. Sammy Sosa was also another one.
No way.
Yeah. So I got to play a few months with him.
That's kind of wild.
Yeah, so that was really cool.
Because you were in high school during the 98.
For sure.
Yeah, so that was like, you got to watch that summer.
That was really neat. And he had hit earlier in the season. He had hit his 600th homer with Texas. But he was great, man. Was
Palmeiro there?
He was not.
Palmeiro wasn't there?
No, Michael Young was there. Kinsler was there. So like the beginning stages of the foundational guys. Kevin Millwood was there. Yeah. Vicente Padilla, some guys that they had spent money on from the pitching side that they didn't necessarily get the performance that they were hoping for.
So this is what year again? This is
07.
This is 07.
Yeah.
So you come in, you come up in August.
Yeah.
Do you go out and produce right away? Do you feel like you kind of make a name for yourself?
Yeah.
And then you fast forward into spring training the next year, first spring training with Texas. Is there a conversation with JD Wash? Like, have you earned a spot? Are you going to be an everyday player?
Yeah. So I came out and I first at bat, and I had always been like more of a patient hitter, like take the first pitch, like
the count a little
whatever,
bit.
right? But it's kind of like, all right, new place, new me, right? Like I'm gonna open eyes and turn heads. Like I'm here to do damage, and I'm here to be a different player, be aggressive, that sort of thing. So even like my first at bat, we're playing the Rays, we're facing Edwin Jackson, who was like harder thrower at the time. Like he threw 97-ish, and that's like big league starters didn't do that back in the day. So first at bat, I swing at the first pitch. I'm hitting ninth. Weak fly out to left field, right? Next at bat, I'm like, all right, swung at the first pitch. I'm going to take this one for sure. Take 1-0 ball. Next pitch, all right, I'm swinging 2-0. That's probably a situation where being a 9-hole hitter earlier in my career, I probably would have said, all right, I'm taking right here. So I'm like, if I get a cookie, like I'm swinging. So I get a fastball right down the middle. I hit it off the wall in the deepest part of the park, double. Have a good at bat later in the game. Ended up 1 for 3. Got out, I think grounded out to shortstop. Next day, got the start again. 3 for 4 with 3 doubles.
Let's go.
So I'm like 4 for my first 8. I get some, I start rolling. I get to face a lefty. I go 1 for 3 against a lefty. Kansas City was in town. I guess long story short, I went like 20 for my first 50. So I'm hitting 400. We go to Detroit. Like, I go 3 for 3 against Verlander. So I'm doing enough to where I'm like, all right, like they have to see that what I'm doing is big league worthy, right? I dropped off a little bit by the end of the season. I hit like.
Are you playing right field at the time or left field?
I was playing all over.
Like
I played all. I even got my opportunities in center field. Those didn't go as well as they had hoped. So it was more corner outfield.
Okay.
It was kind of perfect. Like I would get days off against like tough lefties, and sometimes like. There was a game. Speaking of Sammy Sosa, there was a game in September, I believe. We went to the Metrodome and we played Minnesota facing Johan. He struck out like 17. Sammy Sosa, I think he only gave up like 2 or 3 hits. 2 of them were like Sammy Sosa doubles. I remember that game as a really good one to watch even as a fan of the game, right in the dugout, and I'm like that was pretty impressive. But then, like, I got to face Lackey. I got to face some pretty good arms. So at the end of the day, I faced Felix. So I think I hit around 350 and right about 100 at bats.
You mentioned Pedroia when you get in the minor leagues. Is that little guy, that little voice in the back of your head when you get to Texas, though, too? You talk about you being a new guy, different way of kind of viewing things.
For sure. I think that definitely played into my mindset coming into Texas. Like I'm going to have like a little bit of a chip on my shoulder and maybe like I don't know if arrogance is the right word, or maybe like a controlled, or, for like a type of a confidence in myself that I hadn't had before.
Yeah, we like to ask guys about kind of like a welcome to the show moment, if that happened to you, because kind of to your point, I think for me, as being a guy who probably wasn't really expected to get to the big leagues, maybe I always believed I could get there. Everything was kind of a welcome to the show moment, but I remember facing John Lester my first game, and it was a lot like the mindset you said you had in the minor leagues. I'm like, what am I even doing in the box against this guy? And it took me a long time to kind of change my mindset. And I was fortunate to play with some guys, that had the same mindset as Pedroia. And it's like, no, that guy has to face me. Like, it's my box,
I guess I'll say, like, rewind back to 2006. So I only had 22 at bats in the month of September, my first month in the big leagues. We did have, and I only had 5 starts. So we ended up having back-to-back day-night doubleheaders at Yankee Stadium. Cool. And so because of that, and we were out of the race, and that veteran players don't like playing both games of a day-night doubleheader, I got to start 3 out of the 4 games, right? So I faced Mike Mussina on Sunday Night Baseball. I made a decision, these are all, it was kind of like a welcome to the show series. Yeah. Right? Like, Chin-Ming Wong, I think, was second in Cy Young voting that year. Like, I went 2 for 2 against him with a double off the wall. I hit my first big league homer against Jarrett Wright in Yankee Stadium, which I rounded the bases, and I'm like, deer in headlights. I'm like, what do I do? Big Papi, he's standing there on deck. It was leading off the game, and Big Papi's coming out on deck. He's open arms. He's going to go give me a big hug, right? I completely didn't even see it until the last. I'm like already past him, and I give him like a high five. So it was like an awkward moment. Randy, the only game I didn't start, Randy Johnson threw for the Yankees. Dude. And speaking of Dustin Pedroia, he's like, if he throws one in the purple zone, I'm going to take him deep. He threw one up here, and Pedroia hit one off the wall in left field. Like, he almost took him deep. So I think that series was just like, oh man, like
So you 2 Hall of Famers.
Yeah.
Mussina and Johnson.
Yep. I was like, if I can have some type of success here and perform, under these lights, like I can have success anywhere. Like, I can do this. Like, I can be a big leaguer. So that was kind of like and especially like when I got traded to Texas, and I'm used to playing in front of full houses every single night. And out of the 55,000 that the old ballpark used to seat, there's like 20,000 every night. I'm like, I can definitely play in this environment.
That was the old Yankee Stadium too.
Yeah.
I never got a chance to play there. What was that like, the old Yankee Stadium?
It's
was it louder than the new one?
The fans felt like they were on top of you more. When I played in the new one, I'm like, it's like pushed back. It's not as intimidating. Yeah. It was just as loud, but like, it was more intimidating, the old one. And just walking through the corridors, like to and from the cages, you're like, man, this is where everything happened after 9/11. This is where so many big games have played. But like, probably you guys remember, like, Fenway had a distinct smell. Yeah. Yankee Stadium was kind of the same way. Yeah. And so I remember just walking into the entrance. I remember looking up at it, like, in street clothes, walking up for the first time, getting off the subway, and then just like the smell and just the thought process of like the amount of history that has walked through these hallways and stepped on this field. Like, it makes me tingle. Like, it gives me goosebumps.
And that doesn't go away.
No.
Like, every time, I remember having that feeling, like, every time we were at Yankee Stadium or at Fenway, it was like the first time. Yeah. Like, every single time. And I was fortunate, like, I got to play playoff games at Fenway, at Yankee Stadium. But like, every time you're, and it was also too, like, like, I was fortunate. We played in New York on Derek Jeter Day. Yeah. We got to play when they were retiring, like, Pettit's number. We got to play when they were doing like something for Posada. Yeah. And it was like, so like all these legends are coming back. And so you talk about like all that history, and you're like, dude, it is everywhere around you. Like at Fenway, and so you playing your first taste of the big leagues being in the East. Yep. Being at Fenway every night, going to Yankee Stadium, like, man, and you were how old? 24?
Yeah.
And so dude. And like you said, it doesn't go away. It's not like that kind of allure like wears off. Like it's every time you show up, the pinstripes are the pinstripes, Fenway is Fenway. Man, that's really cool.
For me, coming up in the East too with Toronto, obviously I felt that way. You know, the first handful of times I played in Yankee Stadium, I played in Fenway. And not that it ever really went away, because I was a baseball fan too and kind of a baseball historian. And I always appreciated the fact that, man, look at all these great players that stepped in the same batter's box as me. But when it really hit me was when I went to Wrigley Field, maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years into my career, because you do get immune to it a little bit when you're in the East. You know you're going to Yankee Stadium. You know you're going to Boston. But I'd never been to Wrigley before. Yeah. And I remember like coming into Wrigley and being like, oh my God, this is Wrigley Field. And it was in the summer, so the ivy's green. Yep. The planes are flying over your head. And it felt normal at first. And I remember leaving the on-deck circle, taking my first at-bat, and I swear to God, my legs were shaking in the box like I've never felt before. Yeah. And it was the craziest feeling. It was Jake Arrieta on the mound. I'll never forget it. And I was like, I'm swinging at the first pitch. I'm going to do damage. And I couldn't even feel myself in the box. My legs were shaking. I had to I took the pitch and I looked down and both of my thighs were shaking. I had to step out. It was the craziest feeling I had ever had in a baseball game.
It's awesome.
Speaking of that, who is the first guy you faced in your regular career?
AJ Burnett.
No.
Yeah, I'm used to seeing like these scattering reports of like, all right, it's 92 to 94 with this, and this. And I'm like, 97 to 99. And I'm like, and I was never a guy that really hit high velocity very well.
Who was he with at the time?
The Blue Jays.
The Blue Jays.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was I wasn't excited about it.
That's cool.
Let's fast forward 2011.
Okay.
No, Spring train. 2011? Is 2011 the first year?
2010 was
2010. 2010. So spring training 2010. You're now a little bit more established in the big leagues. That young core of guys that we talked about, the Michael Youngs, the Ian Kinslers are there, and maybe Michael Young's not necessarily young at this point, but what's that spring training like? Do you feel like you guys are building something special? And I know every spring training your manager comes in and goes, this is our year.
Yeah.
You know, we got the right guys in here, but you've been in a lot of different clubhouses. You've been around a lot of teams even now with what you do, and you have to say those things. You want to believe those things, but there's sometimes you're in that room and you're like, man, it's all here.
So let's go back to 2008, my first full year with the Rangers, right? I think we ended up 79 and 83. We set a major league record that year as a team for doubles in a season. We were a good offensive team, and we showed it. So that was kind of the beginning of like, man, we've got a good offensive core here. Now we are lacking some pitching. And being an outfielder, like most nights in the outfield, it was a track meet. Like you're just running after balls left and right. And then you go to 2009. We thought we're like, man, we've taken a step. Like we're a contender. We're a playoff team, right? And I don't remember our exact record. We ended up over 500. And the big guy on the market that year from a pitching standpoint was Roy Halladay. I think he had a no trade clause, and Texas was one of the teams on his no trade list. But we're like, man, like we want Doc. We want Halladay. Didn't end up happening, and they didn't really make any or many moves that were impactful moves. They weren't necessarily believing the way that we were believing as players. But I think we showed enough. So then offseason 2010, we signed Vladimir Guerrero to a 1-year deal. And we're like, okay, like there's a belief there that he's going to add to our lineup. We still were like piecing together our pitching staff. Like we signed Rich Harden. Scott Feldman was our opening day starter.
In 2009?
2010.
2010, okay.
Yeah, so he was coming off a really good year. Rich Harden was one of our guys. He had a good history with the A's. Like he had some injury issues, but the stuff was there. So Colby Lewis came back from Japan. That was like a sneaky, really good move. He had been a Ranger before, threw really hard, but couldn't find the strike zone. He reinvented himself into like this crafty guy, 4-pitch mix, good slider, that sort of guy. We're wondering how that would play out. CJ Wilson transitions from a starter or a reliever to a starter. So we're like, all right, how's this going to play out, right? Well, it ended up pretty well. April was like a slower month. I think in April, we were like a game under 500. May was a little better. But then once we got to June, I think we ran the gauntlet of like when Interleague was only in June back in the day, we played the Astros, who were weak, the Brewers, I don't think they were that good, and the Pirates. So we had this stretch where I think we won like 10 straight.
Yeah.
And we're like, all right, we're rolling. We're a good team. Fast forward July or early July, we acquired Cliff Lee. So like the pieces are all starting to fall into place. We're playing well. The front office is showing their belief in us. Now the question is, once we get to the postseason, what's that going to look like? And as a young player, I'm like, man, we're playing Tampa in the first round. They have the experience. They were in the World Series in 2008. Maybe they have the upper hand. And I was like shocked. I didn't start game one because it was a lefty and David Price. But we came out firing. And it was just a great first 2 games in Tampa. We won those first 2 games. We end up losing the second 2 games. And then Cliff Lee threw a gem in game 5. We play the Yankees. We actually had a significant lead. Josh Hamilton hits a 3-run homer off CC in the first inning. We were rolling. The mystique of the pinstripes overcomes us. They overcome this deficit to end up beating us in game 1. But there was still like this belief, how are we going to react in game 2? I think we won the next 3, maybe. And we ended up taking it home in game 6, get to the World Series. We were the favorite, and the Giants just had too much pitching, and their offense just, they got the big hits. And, so just having the chance to play in the World Series, that was the thrill of a lifetime.
So, but like how that 2010 team came together, like, because I think there's a few things that I don't want to be overlooked here is the Mark Teixeira trade. Mm-hmm. What year was that trade?
That was 2007. That was the same year that I got traded to Texas.
So they that same year you're acquired, they get Elvis Andrus.
Yep.
Who else is part of that trade?
Neftali Feliz. Matt Harrison. Yeah, those were the
those
big 3.
And then when does Adrian Beltre sign?
So that wasn't until 2011.
2011, Adrian Beltre.
So we go to the World Series in 10 without Beltre.
Got it.
And then after 10,
who's the third baseman in 2010?
Michael Young.
Michael Young was.
So Elvis comes in.
That's right.
Michael Young was shortstop. Elvis comes as a shortstop, moves Michael Young to third base.
Yep. And Kinsler's at second.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And so now you guys got Cliff Lee. So you're rolling into 2011.
Yeah.
You've got this young core that has, you guys all got acquired around the same time. Nelson Cruz is there. Josh Hamilton was acquired via trade with Cincinnati going into 2010, right?
Going into 08.
Yep. And was he the MVP in
2010?
2010, he was the MVP. So you've got the reigning MVP. You go sign Beltre. You've got this core that's developed together. You guys are probably riding high going into 2011.
And don't forget, like, sneaky move, right?
Mike Napoli.
Yes. Trade for Mike Napoli. I think it ended up being like some type of 3-way deal where we got Napoli, and we're like, all right, our lineup's pretty good. The pitching staff's coming along. We didn't re-sign Cliff Lee, which allowed us to sign Beltre.
That's right.
So, but then by this time, Derek Holland's starting to come along. Matt Harrison, who we just mentioned, is starting to come along. CJ Wilson and Colby Lewis, who were kind of projects in 2010, established themselves as starters.
Yeah.
So we're in a good place.
Yeah. And you guys and I think a lot of people forget about how like electric Neftali Feliz was.
Yeah.
Like, dude, he was a guy that like he was talked about like all around the landscape of baseball. Like everyone in baseball knew about this guy's right arm. Like,
because nobody threw 100.
Dude, he was such an outlier at that time.
You could
and then you had Alexia Gondo.
Yeah. You could count the guys on one hand that threw 100, right? Probably.
Yeah.
And then he's our guy. I remember him debuting in Oakland. It was electric. Every time it was just like, man, I can't wait to see this guy throw.
Dude, he was so because I remember my first year in the big leagues, 2012, and I remember Neftali was still like he was. I think they were trying to maybe start him at that point, but I was thinking about there was Koji Uehara, Alexia Gondo, Robbie Ross,
Mike Adams,
and then Neftali. Like y'all's bullpen, like you talk about like the pitching coming together. that was kind of the model. And then like you fast forward a few years, like Kansas City Royals kind of like revolutionized like the bullpen usage. Like I feel like Texas doesn't get enough credit for y'all's ability in those teams. Like y'all always scored runs, but your bullpen also shortened games.
Well, and
as good as anybody.
Feliz got all the credit, right?
Yeah.
But like for me, one of the favorite relievers I ever played behind was Ogando, because it was the same every time. It was like, come in, give me the ball, soup, down and away, down and away. Like maybe like mixing the slider. Like his slider was okay in my opinion, but it was 97 downhill. Like the way that he would locate down and away was the model for any pitcher that is going to pitch at any level. Like I loved it.
See, I'm glad you brought that up, because you mentioned the 2015 Kansas City Royals, and I get a huge ick in my stomach when I hear that, because God, man, it was so frustrating batting at the bottom of the order that I'd get one chance at the starter, and then I was facing one of their 5 monsters out of the bullpen. And to me, I felt like that was the first of its kind. But the fact you said that the Texas Rangers were doing this long before they realized they could shorten games by having just monster after monster in the bullpen makes me a little bit less angry at the Kansas City Royals, and maybe a little bit more angry at the Rangers.
Yeah, it was a new precedent for sure, and it just goes to show you the importance of it. And it's funny too. You talk about Ogando, like as good as Wade Davis was, and as good as Holland was, like I think Herrera was the one that hated facing the most. Like 100 with nasty, like a nasty split or whatever.
Yeah, then they had Hochevar.
Yep.
And then they would move
Ryan
Danny They moved Danny Duffy to the bullpen.
Yep.
And it was just like, okay, who's coming in? Okay, this is going to be a tough one.
Uncle.
So go to the World Series. You come back the next year in spring training. You make these additions. I mean, what is that spring training message like? And I've been around Wash. I know how he speaks, and how powerful it is, and how emotional he can be. What's that conversation like? You have something building. Obviously, losing in the World Series, I can't even imagine. It's got to be one of the biggest gut punches you could ever kind of experience, or you just realize. And history has shown, what the Giants did for those, 3-year run. It was just meant to be.
I feel like going into spring training, it was business as usual. It's like, all right, we know what we did last year. We know that we came up one step short. And if you really think about it, like, you think about it in sports. Baseball obviously is our avenue. So we think about it in baseball. Like you beat yourselves or you get beat. Like the Giants straight up beat us. Like they played great baseball, and we won one game. We really weren't competitive. Like they outplayed us. So we're like, all right, we're still the same team, better, if anything. Like what's to say that we're not going to go back and do the same thing? So we were 100% confident, head down, like we were ready to go do damage all over again.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel that way too? Because obviously you played in the World Series, and I never got a chance to go to the World Series, but maybe I don't have that same perspective, because I don't feel like the games, especially in 2015 against the Royals, I don't feel like they were a better team and they beat us. I felt like at the end of the day, we beat ourselves in certain moments of that series where it felt like we should have been the team going to the World Series. I guess, do you have that same sort of...
Yeah, hindsight's really difficult, because you can look back upon every series and be like, man, if we could have just did, like, because it really comes down to just a handful of moments, even though you guys only won one game.
What's that?
You don't feel that way. You just felt like they were a better team. Like it's an easier pill to swallow, because you just felt like they played better, they did everything right.
I guess I don't necessarily remember defensively how we matched up, but you look at offensively and pitching, they outpitched us, they outhit us. Like they got key hits. And like I'm the type of guy, especially like I'm more likely to be hard on myself than to give the other team credit. But like Lincecum, man, like, especially like game 5 was one of the best pitching performances I've ever seen. Like I had 3 at bats. I got the hat trick. I don't think I saw a single hittable pitch.
Yeah.
Like it was nasty.
Their staff that year was Lincecum, Matt Cain, Bumgarner.
And then Jonathan Sanchez was the game that was the game we won.
Yeah. But Bumgarner was like 20 years old at the time. And I mean, that was like the beginning of the monster. But yeah, I mean, they had a good team. I mean, you had Posey, there were some players on that team.
Yep.
And they ended up winning 3 World Series, kind of with that group. But, you talk about like those series, even though it's a 7-game series, you guys played in 5 games, like it really only takes like 1 or 2 moments a game to go like in a team's direction. And it can be, you can lose a game 6-1 and you're like, man, they beat us up and down the field. It's like, well, they really, like, there was just 2 things that happened in their favor that didn't happen in ours, and it enabled them to win by 4 runs. And I think that's when you look at it. Like, I think about the series we had against the Cubs. Yeah, we were up 3-1 and we lost, but it's like there really wasn't a single moment that I'm like, man, we gave a game away or we gave a moment away. They just kept playing. Like they were just, like, that was a really, really good team. We were a really, really good team, but they just kept playing. Yeah, there's a couple times it was like, man, if we could have just gotten a hit here, but it's like getting a hit, like in the big leagues, in those moments, like getting a hit off Chapman, in a big spot, like that takes some skill.
And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of postseason baseball, right? Yeah. Because how many times you get a 3 or 4 run lead early in a game, and the game's kind of over. Like you'll have some good regular season where in the regular season you battle back and forth, right? Yeah. But in the postseason, it's almost like it's like that every single night. Like a 4 and 5 run lead is never safe.
No, ever. Like, yeah, especially y'all in Texas too. The teams that you were on were known for like scoring. Like you guys banged. I mean, there was some, that ballpark played well for offense. Like you guys, I mean, when you look at the 2011 lineup y'all had with Elvis, Kinsler, Beltre, Cruz, like, I mean, Napoli. Dude,
Napoli was hitting like 7th and 8th.
And he was hitting 30.
Mitch Moreland had a great major league career, and he would go on to hit, in the middle of the lineup on a lot of teams. He was hitting 9th.
Dude, Chris Davis gets traded from Texas to Baltimore because he's like, you know what? We've got enough offense. We need some arms.
Yeah.
And he goes and leads the American League in homers like 3 times.
Yeah.
But it was like, but that's trade still isn't looked at as like, man, Texas got fleeced in that deal because it was like, no, they had Moreland. They still had Smoke in the minor leagues, and so, I mean, y'all, there was so much offense on that team that you guys had. So 2011, you guys kind of run the table in the West. Who do you guys face in the first round of the playoffs that year?
So it was Tampa again.
Yeah. Okay.
And actually so it was like, one of those awkward playoff starts. It was like 4 or 5 o'clock. It was at home. We played Tampa instead of with the previous year. We started at their place.
Yeah.
And they throw Matt Moore at us, who,
nasty. That was like his first big league start or something like that, wasn't
it? Was he came up in September, got a little bit of time, I think, out of the bullpen. Yeah, it might have been his first start because he got a little bit of time out of the bullpen. He's throwing, 97 or so from the left side. Because of the awkward start time, there's shadows all across the field. I didn't play that game, so I didn't face him or see his stuff. Johnny Damon went off, had a great game for Tampa, so they end up beating us. And then, it was business as usual. I think we took the next 3 in the deciding game. Adrian Beltre hit 3 homers in Tampa. So it was just all right, you got us the first one, but you got us once, and then now we're gonna come to life.
Do you feel like y'all losing the World Series in 2010 and then getting back to where it's like y'all are just kind of running the table a little bit? Do you feel like that built some resilience on y'all's team? Because it'd be easy for I just know how we felt in 2017 because in 2016 we're on the verge of winning it. Then that offseason, we've pretty much got everyone back. We go sign Edwin Encarnacion.
Yep.
And we're like, and Boone Logan, and we're like, let's go.
Yeah.
But once you get into the season and, like 116 of season, not everything's going to go right. You start to kind of be like, it kind of changes because the year before we were playing with house money. Now the expectations are higher.
Yeah.
So you go in and you face Tampa first round, you lose game 1, but you're favored to win the series. It could be easy to be like, oh, guys, we better pull together. We're going to get upset.
I don't ever remember feeling apprehensive.
Okay.
Like in even like having moments of like just being able to overcome adversity, like I feel like we had proven that enough to ourselves, since the beginning of 2010. And I mentioned in 10, we started off like under 500 in April, right?
Yeah.
Like in 11, we faced off against Boston to open the season, and they had just signed or traded for, I think, signed Carl Crawford to that big deal.
Yeah.
They had just gotten Adrian Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Like they were,
loaded.
I think they may have been like picked to win the American League, right? And we came out and we swept them. I think
awesome.
First pitch of the game, I think Kinsler went deep off of John Lester. So it was just like we made a statement right there. I think we started off like 9-2. Josh Hamilton like slid headfirst into home plate, broke his arm in the beginning of 11, and we missed him for a little bit. Not that we didn't have moments where we struggled in 11, but I don't really remember. We won 96 games, so it was a great season. So it was just like, all right, we're destined to be a playoff team. We're getting back to the World Series. Like there was a belief from the beginning. After we beat Tampa, we faced the Tigers, Verlander, Scherzer. Was it Anibal Sanchez at the time? I know they traded for Fister. So like it was like, it's go time. We're getting back.
That was when, ALCS, y'all played Detroit.
Or Porcello, that's what I'm forgetting.
Y'all played Detroit in the ALCS. And I think one of the probably most famous moments in Rangers history is Nelson Cruz's big homer.
Yeah.
What was that like? Because that was when was the series tied at that point?
That was game.
Or was that game 6?
No, that was game 2 or 3. So game 1, I think that was game 3, maybe. Maybe it was game 2, and because we had won game 1, maybe it took us from a 1-0 lead to a 2-0 lead.
Yeah.
Big moment. I mean, I think, well, to rewind, I think in the bottom of the 9th, I come up hitting 8th with the bases loaded and nobody out. Bottom of the 9th, tie game, right? So it's not like there's no pressure there, but there shouldn't be pressure. Like I just have to hit a deep fly ball or, like there's a lot of ways to win this game. I end up just terrible swing off of Jose Valverde. Weak fly ball to left field, doesn't get the runner home. Mitch Moreland comes up next, and I think it was like a 3-2-3 double play or something like that.
Oh,
so they get out of that big jam, right? So then we go a few innings, and then Nelson comes up in that situation and hits the walk-off grand slam. So what a cool moment, man. He had a lot of great moments, a lot of clutch hits, and I think at the time before Rosarina went off in 2020, I think he had the record for homers in a playoff series or homers in a postseason or something like that. But, like I got to hit behind him most of that series. And I'm watching all the damage he's doing. I want to say it was game 4 or 5, maybe game 4. Verlander had thrown like 120 pitches already in the game, and it's a tight game. You want to show how locked in that he was. I'm on deck just to his open side, and if you guys remember Verlander back in the day, like he was like his own closer. Like he'd start off like 93, 94. By the end of the game, he's throwing 100.
Yep.
He threw Nelly 100-mile-an-hour fastball up and in, and he hits it like off the top of the foul pole in left field. Like that's how locked in that he was. But man, what an amazing, and Napoli goes overlooked as having a great series also because Cruz had such a good series.
And dude, Nelson, how good was Nelson Cruz? Like, well, we're talking about 2010, 2011 Nelson Cruz being like this guy. And then he ended up playing, his last year was what, 2021?
Something like that. He played till like 41 or 42.
And he was, dude, I've heard stories about him kind of like the same aspect with like Edwin Encarnacion, like of those hitters that were just incredibly smart, super detail oriented. Like they would pick up guys that were like tipping.
Yeah.
I mean, and obviously like he really took care of himself. And so like the stuff that he was able to do at the age of 25, he was still doing that 12 years later,
And the
physically.
The cool thing is, you look at, I mentioned when I started playing with him in 07 and how he was kind of like, he wasn't really the guy until September 08. He was the Pacific Coast League MVP in AAA in 08.
Yeah.
Continues that into September 08, hit like 7 or 8 home runs in a month, and then went off, hit 33 homers in 09, and was just really good, stealing bases, playing defense, like all of the above. Yeah, so he was, but what I was going to say, you look at his numbers in his 20s, and then you look at what he did from age 30 on, like, man, it's pretty incredible. Didn't have his first 40 homer season till like 35-ish, 34, 35.
He went to year he went to Baltimore, and it was like he had a year in the first 2 months of the season.
Yep.
It was like end of May, and he's already got 30.
I'm going to go there because we're talking about Nelly Cruz World Series.
Yeah.
Okay, I know.
Yeah, we have to talk about it.
We have to talk about it because for his and I remember Nelly Cruz for the guy maybe later in his 30s that was hitting 30, 40 homers a year, was really a DH. And you had talked about him as a younger Nelson Cruz. He had all the tools. He was a great outfielder, had the arm, could run, could steal bases. In that World Series, he's playing right field. Was he the defender that should have been out there in right field? Was he the best guy? Or at that time, did you guys have a guy on the bench? Were you on the bench at that time where it felt like maybe someone else should have been out there?
I was in left field.
In left field.
Now I'm trying to remember this. So
was Gentry on the team?
Gentry was on the team. I think I had already come in for him. I think because Jaime Garcia started game 6, I believe. And so Gentry started, and I came in for him later in the game. Andy Chavez would have been on the bench for sure, known for his defensive abilities for sure. Back in the day, you didn't take out a player like Nelson Cruz, right? Like that happens more so today, but I think he was a good enough defender. Now, have I had specific conversations with him about this instance? No. Like I've heard things through my teammates that maybe like he had like a tweaked or even worse off groin to where he couldn't move around as well. So that could have factored into it. I guess I've never really looked at like a high home camera to see where he started out and where he was playing. And if that's the case, if he was a little bit, not 100%, you take that into account and you play a little bit deeper. Because what are we taught as outfielders?
So like beat over your head.
When we're in a no doubles type of situation, if the ball's going to be over your head, it's got to be out of the ballpark, right?
Yeah.
And that ball went over his head. It goes off the wall. So heartbreaking for sure. I guess in the grand scheme of things, and we're going back to just like, different people have different philosophies on life and the way that I view life. If that doesn't happen, if he catches the ball, we go on to win the World Series. And this is, we're 15 years later now, right? What would be different about my life? Really, would it have prolonged my major league career? Would it have changed the way that people view me as a man or a player? I would have a World Series trophy in my house, and I when I'm introduced on things like this, like people could say 2011 world champion David Murphy, like there's status and there's glory and fame built into it. That's not the type of status and glory and fame that I'm seeking after. I don't think it's both, right? In the grand scheme of things, that's how I think. Like, I don't think my life would be that much different. Now, as a competitor and a baseball player, when I see the specific highlight, when I see 2011 highlights and I see the Cardinals celebrating on the field, does it make me a little bit sick to my stomach? Yeah, it does.
And it should. It absolutely should.
When I go as a broadcaster now, when I go back to St. Louis to broadcast games, I'm going back this season.
Ugh.
Does it make me a little bit sick to my stomach? Absolutely it does. But I think the prior things that I mentioned, I think they went out.
I mean, that's incredible perspective.
That was a great
and
answer.
I think you're a better man for me for saying those things, because I don't know if
It's hard.
I would feel the same way about it. I mean, and like you said, I mean, I can hear it in your voice. I could hear the passion. Like, that's something you can't ever really get over, can you? I mean, and granted, I never got to the World Series, and I'm thinking about me as, you know, a member of the media last year covering the Blue Jays. I was in the camera well in the 9th inning, 4 strikes away from the Blue Jays winning a World Series, and the feeling that I got, and I wasn't even a player, and I yes, I had a dog in the fight. I wanted Toronto to win, but you know, it's totally different when you're on the field and you're part of that team and your blood, sweat, and tears have gone into that organization and the brotherhood and the bond for you to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was 2 outs in that inning.
Yeah, there's 2 outs.
So you were 1 out away from
1 strike.
You were 1 strike away from.
And it was all right. So, and it was Freeze was up, and it was a guy at first.
There was first and second,
and y'all were up by.
So we were up by 2. Yeah.
Man, 1 strike away.
I'm pretty sure it was first and second.
1 strike away.
1 strike away, and then we were 1 strike away a few innings later, also. So.
Okay, so, you know, I have to ask you this question too, since the Band-Aid's off and the wound is open. We see this a lot. And you see this a lot, you know, if you go back and just look at the history of, you know, the World Series, someone has to make the final out of the series, right? And a lot of times you don't visually see the guy who's hitting, you see the guy who catches the ball or records the out. And in my mind, I'm going through it right now. And I remember the double play ball hit to Mookie Betts to end this World Series. And that's the guy you kind of think about, you know, Mookie feeling the ground ball, stepping on second base, jumping, throwing it. As soon as that ball's caught, he's throwing his glove in the air. But we have someone here who made the final out. And, you know, maybe no one's ever heard that side of the story before. And, you know, unfortunately, you were the guy who had to make the last out. But what is kind of that feeling like knowing, and granted, it was a 4-run game, I believe, right? But you know there's 2 outs. You're walking up to the home plate. You're your team's last hope.
Yeah. The fact of what you just mentioned, it was a 4-run game. We scored those 2 runs in the first inning and hadn't scored since the first and really didn't have much going. I think that when you put it in perspective, that makes it a little bit easier because that 4-run deficit at the time, it felt like a 10-run deficit. Because they had just overcome and overcome and overcome, as we had so many times throughout the course of the series. But you were kind of mentally exhausted by that point, and you're going up there trying to have your best at bat. But I know I'm facing a good closer in Jason Mott, who threw hard. He's got a good riding 4-seam fastball. And so, man, I'm trying to do whatever I can to keep this thing going. And I knew off the bat, even though I hit it almost to the warning track, like I hit it okay, right? But I knew off the bat, I'm like, that's probably not getting out of here off the wall. And I put enough air underneath it where that's probably getting caught. So defeating feeling for sure. I get to be the guy that gets to run past the dog pile, that has to run past the dog pile on the way back. So yeah, once again, like a little bit sick to your stomach type of feeling. And especially more so years later, because the second year that we got to the World Series, it's like, man, well, we had to grind to build this team up and put a product together that could get there. First of all, we got there in 2010, we got outplayed and lost. In 2011, it was almost like we envisioned this. We knew we could, and we did. So a lot of people, if you pay attention to the team in 2012, a lot of people will say 2012 was arguably our best team in that run, in that stretch of guys. And we just ran out of gas like the last month of the season, and Oakland went crazy. Yeah. So they took it from us, and we were mentally and emotionally, physically exhausted, I guess, when we played Baltimore in the 1-game wild card, and they end up beating us. And that was kind of where it ended. We still played well in 2013. And we got to the 1-game, whatever it was.
Game
I think
163.
we tied game 163. And that was the end of it. But at the time, you're like, well, it hurts and it stinks, and I'm going to process this, but we're not really losing much. So we're just going to get right back here in 2012 and that didn't happen. So you're thinking, all right, now 15 years later, we had that opportunity. And I will say, like, and I'll say the exact opposite. Like in 2011 or 2010, I feel like we were outplayed. In 2011, we did enough things where I feel like we beat ourselves. I did play golf with Michael Young like 4 or 5 years after that. And he's like, you know what? The way that I look at it is the majority of players that play this game, they will never even have the opportunity to be in the spot that we were in. We had the spot. We were in the spot. We had the opportunity, and we just didn't get the job done. So,
dude, and I will say, like, going back to what you said about, like, you know, you get there in 2010, you're back in 11, and then you're going into 12, and like, man, this is probably the best team we've got. But how difficult and exhausting it is to do those deep runs year after year after year. And then I remember after, 2016 World Series, 2017 postseason, 2018 postseason, and having so much more respect for like those dynastic teams like the Yankees who were in it like every year. It's like, hey, like, they're going to be busy in October. And
what about what the Dodgers are doing right now?
Yeah, the Dodgers doing that now.
Incredibly impressive and difficult what they've been able to do.
Yeah. I think that's what an overwhelming amount of talent will get you, because you do start to wear down. And as much as we're probably not going to want to admit it as much as we want, like, you are going to have a drop off in production once you get into your 30s. And once you age further into your 30s, that process seems like it's a little bit slower with the Ohtanis and the Freemans and the Mookie Bettses and all of the great players that were your Jeters, your Bernie Williams, your Jason Giambis, your, Clemens, Pettit. So if you've got an overwhelming pool of talent, even if a few of the guys, they start to head downhill from a talent perspective, there's still going to be plenty of fuel in the tank, because there's other guys that the talent is off the charts. And then when you listen to Jeter talk and just his competitive nature, like, he's just a hard one to keep down, right? So I think that is what led to his leadership, is what assisted in that. And then, the Dodgers are just, because they started out on fire last year. They fizzled out toward the end of the regular season. They had some injuries, especially to their pitching staff, and the bullpen didn't pan out the way they wanted to for all the money they spent. And then it's like, once the postseason started, they're like, all right, we're just going to flip the switch.
They really did. I mean, they like some teams and players, they just have the ability to just like elevate. Mm-hmm. Like, they really do just have the ability to elevate. And I will say too, like, back to your point too, is like some of those games, like those like World Series games and those CS games, you can speak to this too, is like those, like, that's not just like, from a pitching standpoint, like, those aren't just like, it wasn't just 20 extra innings on my arm. Like, those are those are heavy loads.
Yeah.
Those are really heavy loads.
It felt like years off my life were taken.
Yeah.
And,
there's a reason why Blake Snell's not throwing yet.
And there is a, at the peak of my career, I had this internal belief that I was the best to do it in the outfield from a center field defensive standpoint. And I remember playing in that one game wild card game against Baltimore and being scared, like, oh man, I hope they don't hit the ball to me right now, because like it was a huge like burden to like carry. It's like, as confident as I was, I didn't want to be the reason we lost the game, you know, and it's tough to admit that. And as you get into the flow of the game, those feelings go away. But the build up to the game, the lead up to the game, where that, the first pitch, you're standing in the outfield and you're like, I really hope I'm not the reason we lose. Yeah. I literally just want to kind of just do my job. I don't even want to be the best player on the field. I don't want to be the worst. Just like, let me just stay in my lane and let everyone else kind of figure it out. It's crazy to feel that way, because that's what the postseason does to you.
And that's what the fans, they can't see and they can't know. And we're probably not going to say that as a player in a post-game interview or anything like that, but it's the same as like, being a competitor, like, I guess the thing that I do that's most competitive on this side of things, I mean, I guess there's coaching, but like personally, like playing golf, right? And I was talking to somebody about it recently. Like, there's days where I stand over a putt or stand over a shot and I'm like, I'm gonna dot this thing. Like I'm gonna put this approach shot right on the green. I'm gonna put this tee shot right down the middle. Like I'm gonna make this 10-foot putt, or I'm gonna even a guy that doesn't golf much, I'm gonna miss it by that. But it's the same thing as a baseball player. There's days you step out there and I'm like, I don't care who I'm facing. Like I'm gonna hit this ball in the gap. I'm gonna go hit a ball at 105 miles an hour. Defensively, same thing. And there's days where like, I really don't know if I want this at bat, or I really don't know if I want the ball hit to me, but you grind through. And that doesn't mean that because you have that negative mindset that you're not going to get the job done. Because at the end of the day, when you step in the box, I'm like, I may not feel as dangerous as I possibly have been in the past or can be, but I am going to go grind and I'm going to make this pitcher's this at bat or this pitcher's day. Like it's going to be hard for him. Like he is going to have to battle his tail off to get me out.
Mentioning being part of, the Blue Jays broadcast for this 7-game series, and obviously you both played in 7-game series. In some way, we kind of were all part of some of the greatest Game 7s in World Series history. Kind of take me through that Game 7, your Game 7, which is one of the most memorable Game 7s. And then, I think what happened this year is going to go down as one of the greatest Game 7s of all time as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I think yours was Game 6, where all the
Game 6 was the good one. Game 7, it was kind of anticlimactic for what the series was, and Game 6 was definitely the best one. Well, first of all, I'll say as heartbreaking as Game 6 was, we knew we had a Game 7, and there was no doubt in my mind, as heartbreaking as that was. Like I walked out of the ballpark that night, going to the team hotel. I'm like, we're gonna go win a World Series tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then Josh Hamilton gets a big hit. We have some big hits in the first inning. We have a 2-0 lead, and then goodness, David Freese right back at it.
Yeah.
And he ties it up with a double to left center. And so you ride this emotional roller coaster up and down. So you go from we are to are we? And it's so back and forth.
Dude, it is so hard. Like, because you think about a 7-game series, as a fan, is just like the hours that the game is on, right? Like 7 games you play over what, like 11 days?
Mm-hmm.
And like you have all of this travel and all of this prep. And so you have almost like 2 weeks of your life that is devoted, obviously everything is leading up to it, but like 7 games. So it's like 2 weeks of just like trying to stay where your feet are. Like all you're trying to do is just like stay right here, because it is super easy. Like against the Cubs, we were up, we won Game 1, 6-0, right? It was like, and it was 6-0 game. If it was tight, and then Roberto Perez hit a 3-run homer in the bottom of the 8th. And so it kind of opened things up a little bit. And then Game 2, we get beat. And so it's 1-1 going into Wrigley. And then, going to Wrigley's a whole nother thing, because it's the first playoff game there, or first World Series game there in like 100 years. And dude, I remember walking onto the field at Wrigley, and pretty much everybody on our team besides, some of the coaches like Tito and Mickey Callaway, and then Andrew Miller had been he wasn't on the active roster for the 13 Red Sox, but Napoli. But outside of that, like, we're a bunch of young guys who kind of like the Texas group who's like, hey, in 2010, where it's like, we've grinded our way to this point. And so this is our first taste of really all of it. And dude, there's fans at Wrigley dumping like urns with like grandparents' ashes like onto the field, because it's Wrigley, right? It's Cubs Nation and all this stuff, and so like they're going crazy. So you're getting the sense of like, what are we really a part of? And all at the same time, you're trying to stay like in the moment, like don't pay attention to this over here, don't get caught up in this over here, just play the game. It's still the same game. But man, it is a mental battle just to stay where you're at. And then you have the highs and lows of like David Freese tying it up, or Rajay Davis tying it up. Oof. And then, like all of it. So it is just so taxing. And I remember after Game 7, I remember feeling extremely proud of the group of guys that I was playing with. Like, and I remember feeling like, dude, this was the most fun month of baseball like I have ever been a part of.
Yeah.
I want to go to Arizona and I want to get started right away on next year. But in that same breath, like I got home, and like 2 days after we got home, dude, I was so just like numb to it all, where I was just like, I didn't know which way was up for like a week. And so, so it's just, it's indescribable, kind of like being on the backside of it when you're so close and then you lose. Because I think I would love to, talk with like Rizzo or one of those guys and be like, what was it like for you? Because I know it was probably, you had the parade and you had all this stuff, but like, how did that impact your next season? Because I know what it did to my next season. It was, I don't know. It's a really, really weird thing to be a part of those great games, but be on the losing side.
Yeah, I think I got a unique perspective to it this year, not being a player and being more of a fan and being part of the media. I felt all the same feelings that you guys had. And granted, I didn't get to the World Series, yet alone a Game 7. But, we lost in a couple of Game 6s with an opportunity to go to a Game 7, to go to the World Series. And, those stung and they continue to hurt. But getting a different perspective as almost a fan of the game and thinking about the moment in Game 7 where, Ohtani's pitching and Bo Bichette hits this home run, and you talk about like feeling like the roof's going to come off that place, and then the Dodgers just kind of, chipping away a little bit, and then ultimately going from the press box down to the field, getting ready. Someone's in my ear talking about, okay, if they win, we're doing this, stay out of the way, let them celebrate. Hazel's going to go in and do her thing. And as players come out and celebrate, you're going to interview them. And me and the guy that I'm working with, we're so pumped. We're like, dude, this is going to be the craziest thing. I never got to be in a World Series. So like just being there as a fan and a media member, like was the craziest feeling for me. And then Miguel Rojas hitting that home run. And the feeling that I got was like strange, but then I kind of looked around and people cared so much and people wanted it so much. And I think as players, that's why we want it so much. We want it for ourselves, but you also think about, the 50,000 people, the millions of people watching at home, and it's so out of their control. And I guess that's where I'm leading to as someone who's no longer playing anymore. It's so out of your control.
Yep.
And it's so helpless at times. And I just felt so bad for people there. And just to be part of that in some way and just being there just gave me a whole different perspective on the game. And I'm sure you live it a lot now with what you're doing.
I think it's a good perspective for all of us. There is like either from a broadcast side, because that's what we hate as players, right? Like there's nothing worse than a broadcaster or media member that like the game's easy. Like, why aren't they getting the job done? And now I'm like, man, I got to tread lightly here. Cause even like, say 5 or 6 years ago when I started as a broadcaster, Jeff Mathis was on his way out as a veteran catcher, known for his glove, not his bat. Hadn't really hit much that year. They call up Jose Trevino, who had done okay in the minor league. Same thing, good defender. But I think he had a game where he went like 2 for 3. And I said on a post-game show, and it's not even really that bad, but it's just like, man, it's great to see the Rangers getting some production from the catching position. And like anything that I say, I'm like, if that player heard that, like how would they take that? Yeah. So like not being critical of the players. You talk about control, man. Like my 15-year-old is playing freshman baseball on JV. I've coached him since he was 6, and there's probably been like 6 or 7 games he's ever played that I have not coached. So now that I'm watching these games, I'm just like, well, why aren't they doing this? Or why does the lineup look like this? Or why, like I am not getting to give the signs, to write out the lineup, to, so it's easy to like second guess things, right? But I think the beauty too, in any of our situations is whether you're a media member, whether you're a player, I think it doesn't get lost on us how much of a fan of the game that we are. Because I remember going into Game 7, playing in Game 7, I was just like, I get to play in a World Series Game 7. Or I remember being retired, just recently retired, when you guys were in the World Series. My kids were still young. We put them to bed. I think my wife's cleaning the kitchen. Yeah. And I see Rajai Davis hit the homer. And like we become numb to a lot of great things in baseball just throughout the things that we see in our major league career. Rajai Davis hits the homer. I'm laying in my bed and I go, oh my goodness. Like I yell it from the bedroom. My wife's like, what's going on? So just great moments. And the same thing, watching Game 7 this past year, it was incredible. And man, I feel for Alejandro Kirk, because as guys that know the game of baseball, you're like, man, Yamamoto is nasty. His split is nasty. You get a guy at the plate that makes a ton of contact and he's got no speed. Yeah. Like, this seems like it's a perfect double play situation ball game.
And it is one of those things. It's like, because I'm sure there's plenty of, armchair quarterbacks who are like, dude, all you need to do is get the ball in the air. It's like, you understand that they gave Yamamoto $300 million because of pretty much that splitter right there. Like, you can't hit it in the air. Like that thing was so, oh man, like the baseball that we got to watch this year.
Yeah, I love you talking about that too, because all three of us are now fortunate enough to, be part of the media. And that's the one thing that I said that I would always do is I would never forget how hard it is to play. Yeah. And granted, I'm recently retired, but I got put in situations during the postseason where I started to realize the game, and I got a fan's perspective, the game is so much slower from the press box, from the seats. Why did the manager make that decision? Why did they leave him in there? How did he not get the ball in the air? Those thoughts start going through your head because it seems easier from afar. But the fact that I played it, I know it's not. And that was the one thing I said I would always promise myself. I would never be critical of players because I didn't like when people were critical of me because I know how much I care. I know how hard it was. I know how hard it is. It's never been harder. And sometimes you just got to be honest, but it's not an attack against the player. It's just, you have a wealth of experience and knowledge, and it's important for fans to hear that too, though.
Well, what's our job ultimately as media members? We're telling the story, right? And so there's a lot of truth in telling the story. Did they play well or did they not play well? Did they get the job done or did they not get the job done? So that's up to us to tell the story. But whether it's by our tone or the exact wording that we use, like, there's a way that we can tell the truth that is respectful of the players.
Yeah, speaking of respectful, we're going to go back. I don't want to skip over those other parts of your career, in Cleveland, Anaheim. But when we met yesterday, we kind of talked about the end of your career. You signed a minor league deal with, who's the first team you signed a minor league deal with?
Oh, Boston.
Boston again. So kind of full circle moment. They release you kind of towards the end of spring training. You go to Minnesota. I'm sure there's a conversation there that, hey, just get your feet wet. You're going to the big leagues, and you decide to hang them up.
So there was kind of a changing of the guard of baseball a little bit. Like, you could tell that analytics were starting to become more and more of a factor, right? And I was aging, so I didn't have the speed that I used to. The game speeds up on you. I didn't have the bat speed I used to. I didn't have like I was never a guy that walked a ton, but I wasn't as selective as I used to be. So all of the things that favor the modern day hitter, that was starting to take over. And by those standards, I wasn't like an analytics darling type of player. So, early in my career, it's like, oh, you're in your mid 30s. So we'll pay you $1 million. You can be a bench guy and get 100, 200 at bats. You can play against righties and be productive and be a good clubhouse guy. And we'll pay you a little bit of money just to hang on, and you can be a 12 to 15 year guy. So that type of player was starting to be phased out.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it would happen so quickly. My previous time through free agency, I just got a 2-year deal, but I was one of the first guys to sign. So my agent was like, probably going to have to let the dominoes fall, see where Alex Gordon signs, see where Jason Hayward signs, like all of these guys. And then toward the end of the offseason, then we'll see what happens. Well, I blink and it's like February 1st and all these guys are starting to get ready to go to spring training. And I still haven't really had many phone calls like at all, except if it's like, all right, you want to come on a minor league deal. And even though I knew that I wasn't performing to my standards, I knew I had enough of a track record to where I felt like I should have had a guaranteed major league deal somewhere. There's got to be an organization where I can be a 25th guy somewhere, right? So I accept the deal. on February 29th. It was a leap year, 2016. And so I go back to Boston. I think that the X factor for them was they had signed, I forgot his name. It was Rusney Castillo, I believe.
Yeah.
The Cuban.
So they had given him a pretty good, they'd given him a pretty good, multi-year deal, but they also were unsure if he was going to make the team or if he needed to be sent down to the minor leagues. Well, long story short, I had an out in my contract where, I could leave early on in camp if I felt like I wasn't going to make the team, if they felt like I wasn't going to make the team, and to where, I could go look for a job somewhere else. So it became evident that I wasn't going to make the Red Sox. I exercised my out clause. So at the time, I had been talking to Chris Davis and he had been talking to Buck Showalter.
Yeah.
And he was like, hey, I think Buck likes you as a player. And I think there's consideration that they would be interested in you as a major league player, like on the getting a guaranteed deal. So I kind of waited a few days. That never came to fruition. The Pirates, they offered me like a split deal to where, basically I would have had a guaranteed deal for about a month and a half or so, and then they could cut me without having to pay me the rest of the year. And so it was kind of the same thing. Even though I was running out of leverage, I was like, man, I feel like I have a better track record than this, that something's going to pop up. So it's opening day. I'm sitting at home. I'm having a hard time. I'm wondering what the future is going to look like. And then about 10 days into the season, the Twins call and they said, well, we're 0-9. We've got a young outfield. We've got Miguel Sano. We've got Byron Buxton. We've got Eddie Rosario, and they're all struggling. And so we need some veteran presence in our clubhouse, and we need a guy that's going to help right the ship and stabilize things a little bit. So go to AAA for 10 days, and we will guarantee that we will call you up after that 10 days. So I go to AAA. From the second that I left, I'm like, this just doesn't necessarily feel right. This feels weird. And I'm struggling. And I'll say that the season started, my family loved having me home. I think we were getting to the point where we had 4 young kids. My oldest was 7. My youngest was 1, and 2 in between. And I think just that lifestyle was kind of grinding on my wife, grinding on my kids. And so I'm like, is this the right thing to do? I'll go to AAA. I didn't play great. Terry Ryan, the GM at the time, comes in town on day 8, and he watches me for a few days. Day 9, they designate a player for assignment to make room for me. And Terry talks to me after day 9. He's like, hey, we agreed on this. You haven't looked great. Are you ready? And I'm like, man, I know it hasn't looked good, but you put me on a big league field and you put me in a big league situation. The lights go on, I will be ready. And I strongly felt like that would be the case, but inside I was wrestling with this. And so just had a lot of difficult conversations with my wife, and we felt like it was the right decision that I walk away from that deal, and that, that I turn it down, that it was, if this is what my career had come to, then it was better to walk away than try to keep chasing the dream, not being an impact player. And sorry to cut you off, and real quick, you want just proof that God was telling me I made the right choice. So the plan was I was going to fly home. Well, I told Terry Ryan, I'm like, man, let me play one more day. I know I'm going to retire, but let me play one more day just to kind of ride off into the sunset type of thing. I'm going to retire, then I'm going to be done. And so I tell my wife this.
One more day, in AAA? Or
yeah, one more day in
just,
AAA.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't going to make them, call me up if that wasn't going to happen. So, so my wife was like, all right, let's surprise the kids. Fly home. We'll go pick the kids up from school. They're going to be surprised, but we're going to tell them that daddy is done playing baseball and that he's going to be home every day and he's not going to travel anymore. So my daughter at the time was 5 or 6. And so she comes down. My last game was on a Sunday. I was going to fly home on Monday. She comes down Sunday night. She's crying, telling my wife, she's like, I really miss daddy. And so she's like, hey, so we FaceTime. She's like, well, let's call Daddy. So we FaceTime, and I was just like, hey, you can't tell your sister and your brothers, but I got a surprise for you. I'm like, because we just didn't want to see her heartbroken for like another 24 hours, right? Daddy's flying home in the morning. He's going to be done playing baseball. He's going to be home for good. And she was like, tears in her eyes. And she was like, I've been praying for this for so long. It's like 6 years old. So I'm just like, man, I started tearing up, and I'm like, that is just complete validation that this was the right move.
Yeah. What confirmation. And because I'm sure, like, as a big leaguer who's coming to, like, you've played baseball your entire life since you were 3 years old. It's something you wanted to do your whole life.
Yeah.
And so what is it like getting to that point where it's like, man, is this the end?
Yeah.
So trying to navigate, like, making that decision and then ultimately being given that great gift of, like, that's great closure right there.
It's kind of like, I guess I'll relate it to the World Series conversation we had. Like, if I would have won a World Series or not, like what would that have done to change my life? Right. Well, I feel like this one's a little bit more obvious.
Yeah.
Because it's easy. Like I ended up with 8.5 years of service time. So assuming I would have ended up with 9+, and then one more year, I would have got to 10. Like that's the goal, right? We all want to get 10 years because only 10% of the players in baseball ever reach 10 years of service time. That's accomplishment right there. You're fully vested with pension, so on and so forth. But it's easy as a player to want to chase money, status, fame, like all of these things that if we're talking about our legacy as a man, maybe the game of baseball plays into that a little bit, but not nearly as much as being a man, a husband, and a father.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it was just I was at the point where my family needed me more than the game of baseball needed me.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you for saying that. I feel like you just took me to therapy too, because I mean, you obviously got kind of a front row seat to it as being a member of the Rangers, broadcast team. But, I struggled with the end of my career a little bit, the way that, it went down. I got hurt. I worked my way back. I didn't really get a chance to play. Thought I was going to play, and then I got called in the office and it was over.
Yeah.
But, you saying all those things kind of confirmed what I had felt like in my heart for a long time is, if I would have finished the year with the Rangers, if I would have hit a couple more home runs, if I would have made a couple more plays, was it going to change anything about the way I felt about myself as a baseball player? Not really.
Yeah.
But me getting a chance to spend that extra time, those extra 4 months that I probably wouldn't have got with my kids and my wife, has just been the biggest blessing of my life. And it's just allowed me to kind of transition from ball player to what's really most important in my life, and being a dad, and now having a new baby, like being home every day has just been like the biggest blessing for me. So I appreciate you saying that stuff, because I don't think enough people that are fans of baseball really get to hear the human side of what we all feel as players. And we have tough decisions to make, and a lot of it gets blinded by the things you mentioned: fame, statistics, money. But at the end of the day, we're human beings, and our family and our relationship with God, our relationship with our wives, our kids is our number one priority. So I appreciate you saying that stuff.
Yeah,
dude, I can't thank you enough for coming on. I know we've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah,
but dude, I think one of the things that, like, we love so much about this platform and kind of what we get to do is we get to hear the subjective story, like yours, right? Like, we get to hear your story from you. And I think everybody's story is important, but getting to hear, like, your journey from your perspective and how it impacted you, I take a lot from every episode we get to do. So I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing yours.
Yeah, well, two guys that I really respect. I mean, loved watching you both. You on the mound, you just running after balls in center field, and you're a guy that got the absolute most out of your talent package. So we're all on to new journeys, right? And I know that you guys are newer in this podcast journey, and man, I hope is extremely successful for both of you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man.